The door to the parlor did not just open, it groaned. Heavy, metallic protest that echoed through the hollow hallway of the neglected estate. For decades, this room had been a tomb for memories, a place where time had settled in thick, gray blankets of dust and forgotten aspirations. As the lead restorer, Elias, stepped across the threshold, the soles of his boots crunched against a layer of grit and fallen plaster. He did not speak. In this line of work, silence was the canvas upon which the symphony of restoration would soon be painted. Behind him, his crew moved with practiced rhythmic grace. They were ghosts of the future, here to exorcise the ghosts of the past. The air was heavy, tasting of stale cedar and damp earth, but through the grime-streaked windows, a beam of morning sun pierced the gloom, illuminating dancing dust motes. It was a chaotic landscape. Stacks of yellowed newspapers from a forgotten era, a mahogany coffee table buried under rusted tins, and velvet armchairs that had long ago lost their vibrant crimson to the ravages of moths. Elias reached out, his gloved fingers grazing the surface of a nearby side table. The sound was a soft, dry hiss, the first note of the ASMR journey. He signaled to the team. It was time to begin the great stripping. First came the junk removal. This was not a frantic disposal, but a calculated extraction. Each piece of debris was handled with a specific intent. The crew worked in a sonic harmony that would soothe any observer. Crinkle. Heavy-duty black bags were unfurled, the plastic snapping sharply in the quiet air. Thud. A stack of moldering books was placed gently into a crate for sorting. Scrape. Elias used a metal trowel to lift a hardened patch of spilled wax from the floorboards, the vibrations traveling up his arm with satisfying rhythmic. The room was a puzzle of layers. As they cleared the center of the floor, the true scale of the task became clear. Beneath the piles of refuse lay a parquetry floor of intricate design, currently hidden under a film of filth so dense it looked like charcoal. To their left, the walls were draped in wallpaper that was peeling away in long parchment-like curls. Elias walked to the corner and caught the edge of a loose strip. With a slow, deliberate motion, he pulled. The sound was like a long, drawn-out exhale, the adhesive giving way in a series of tiny, crackling pops that resonated through the chamber. "The foundation is solid," Elias whispered, his voice a low rumble that barely disturbed the settling air. "But the beauty is buried deep. We have to peel back the years before we can invite the light back in." By midday, the heaviest pieces of ruined furniture had been hauled away, leaving the room skeletal and raw. The removal of the clutter had changed the acoustics. The space no longer felt stifled. Now, every footstep echoed, and the rustle of their protective suits sounded like the shifting of dry leaves. They stood at the precipice of the true transformation. The junk was gone, leaving only the bones of a masterpiece. Elias picked up a high-powered industrial vacuum, its nozzle clicking into place with a definitive metallic snap. The deep cleaning was about to begin, and the silence of the house was finally ready to be broken by progress. This room was a canvas, and they were ready to paint its future with care and quiet precision.
Elias picked up a high-powered industrial vacuum, its nozzle clicking into place with a definitive metallic snap. He flipped the switch, and the machine breathed a low, powerful hum that seemed to vibrate the very foundations of the room. He moved the heavy-duty head across the floorboards with a slow, deliberate cadence. The sound of grit and ancient debris rattling through the corrugated tube was a rhythmic, percussive symphony, a sequence of clash sounds as the vacuum swallowed the residue of a forgotten era. Every pass revealed a sliver of the original wood, a pale ghost of what lay beneath the grime. While Elias focused on the perimeter, Sarah and Marcus began the meticulous task of deep scrubbing the ornate moldings. They used small, specialized brushes that made a soft, bristly scritching against the plaster. They sprayed a fine, lavender-infused cleaning solution that hung in the air like a refreshing mist. The liquid bubbled as it hit the dirt, a tiny, microscopic fizzing that signaled the chemical breakdown of decades of neglect. They wiped the residue away with thick microfiber cloths, the fabric making a soft whoosh as it polished the curves of the crown molding. The room began to exhale. The heavy, oppressive scent of dust was replaced by a sharp, clean tang of citrus and soap. Elias transitioned from the vacuum to a professional-grade steam cleaner. The device let out a sharp, pressurized hiss, a sudden psss, releasing a billowing cloud instantly, melting away layers of wax and soot. He wiped the area dry, the cloth squeaking against the now prime surface, a high-pitched note of victory in the quiet house. Next came the walls. Elias took a wide-bladed metal scraper, its edge polished and sharp. He found a seam in the tattered damask wallpaper and slid the blade underneath. The sound was a long, jagged that echoed in the high-ceiling space. He pulled back a long, continuous strip of paper, watching it curl into a spiral like a dried leaf. Beneath the yellowed paper, the plaster was cool and gray, a solid foundation waiting for a new identity. They worked together, the sound of peeling and scraping creating a steady, industrial white noise that filled the void.
All right, easy now.
By mid-afternoon, the
Just
heavy
set it down
cleaning
slow.
was done. The air was
Okay,
cool
clear.
and still. Elias brought in the floor polisher, a heavy circular machine that looked like a sleek silver beast. He applied a thick, amber-tinted resin to the oak planks, the liquid pouring out with a viscous, slow glug-glug. As he engaged the motor, the polisher began its hypnotic dance. It moved in wide, overlapping circles, the buffing pads making a deep, resonant whir-whir against the wood. The transformation was breathtaking. The dull floor began to reflect the soft light from the windows, turning into a mirror of deep, warm honey. They stood together in the center of the room, their shadows stretching long across the gleaming expanse. The bones of the masterpiece were finally clean,
Ready
stripped
to
of their
lift?
sorrow and bathed in the soft
A
light
little
of the
higher on your
afternoon.
side.
Marcus reached for the first tin of
Okay, hold
luxury
it right
eggshell
there.
paint. The
Ready to
heavy metal
lift?
lid yielding with a satisfying wet
Little
pop
higher on your
as it was
side.
pried open. Inside, the
Okay,
cream-colored
hold it right
liquid
there.
was smooth and thick,
All set on this
smelling of
side,
fresh
yes.
beginnings. He took a wooden stirrer and began to swirl it slowly, the
Nice
liquid
work.
folding over itself with a quiet,
High
velvety
standards
sound.
apply to
The
every
preparation
part of
was
the
finally
room,
over.
even the
The true
plants.
artistry was ready to begin.
The preparation was finally over. The true artistry was ready to begin. Marcus dipped the fine-edged brush into the cream, the bristles soaking up the pigment with a soft, thirsty sigh. He approached the first corner, where the wall met the ceiling, and began the cutting-in process. The brush moved in a steady, rhythmic motion, the sound a gentle hiss-swish against the smooth plaster. Each stroke left behind a flawless trail of ivory, slowly erasing the ghostly outlines of the room's neglected past. Behind him, the rest of the crew began loading the nap rollers, the trays letting out a hollow, rhythmic clack-clack as they moved the heavy cylinders through the paint reservoirs. When the first roller hit the wall, it produced a deep, wet thrum, a satisfyingly consistent texture that filled the silence of the apartment. They worked in a focused manner, a choreography of restoration. The cream paint wasn't just a color, it was a layer of silence, dampening the echoes and sealing away the lingering scent of dust and dampness. By the time the second coat was applied, the room glowed with a soft, diffused light, reflecting the golden hour that now spilled through the pristine windows. The walls were no longer scars of neglect, but a velvet canvas of modern elegance, the eggshell finish providing a subtle, expensive sheen that felt soft to the eye. Next came the floors. The old scuffed oak had been sanded down to its raw heart earlier, and now it sat expectant and pale. Marcus knelt down, his knee pads making a muffled thud on the wood. He opened a canister of high-gloss walnut stain. The scent was sharp and earthy, reminiscent of old libraries and expensive furniture. As he applied the first pass with a wide microfiber applicator, the wood seemed to wake up. The grain leaped forward, swirling patterns of dark chocolate and amber appearing under the liquid's touch. The sound was a low, melodic schloop as the dry wood drank the oil, darkening instantly into a rich, luxurious finish that reflected the ceiling like a dark, still pond. He moved with a back-and-forth grace, ensuring not a single bubble or streak marred the surface. As the floor dried into a mirror-like sheen, the crew began the delicate transition from construction to curation. Large, heavy crates were wheeled in, their rubber casters clicking softly over the door threshold. These held the bones of the luxury living room, a modular velvet sofa in deep emerald, a hand-carved marble coffee table, and brass light fixtures that caught the dimming light. Every movement was deliberate and whispered. Marcus unwrapped a designer floor lamp, the crinkle of the protective plastic sounding like a miniature thunderstorm in the quiet room. He positioned it with surgical precision, the weighted metal base meeting the polished wood with a definitive, solid clink.
He picked up a gold-trimmed side table, its glass top clinking delicately against the frame. With a soft grunt of effort, he lowered it onto the plush rug, the fibers swallowing the metal legs with a muffled hush. He then began to unbox the centerpiece, a massive obsidian-framed mirror. The cardboard groaned as it was torn open, and the tape gave way with a long, screeching reap that echoed through the rejuvenated space. The room was no longer a site of labor. It was becoming a sanctuary. The heavy curtains, thick with the scent of high-end textiles, were hoisted onto the brass rods. The metallic rings slid across the poles with a bright, melodic zing-zing before the fabric fell into graceful pleats.
The fabric fell into graceful pleats, anchoring the room's new aesthetic with their heavy weight. With the curtains set, the professional moved toward the obsidian-framed mirror. He lifted it with a focused grunt of effort, the sturdy back of the frame meeting the reinforced wall brackets with a solid, resonant thud. As he tightened the mounting screws, the rhythmic crick, crick of the manual screwdriver provided a steady, grounding beat against the ambient silence. Once secured, he took a microfiber cloth to the surface. The fabric made a soft, rhythmic swish-swish sound, erasing every stray fingerprint and revealing a reflection no longer clouded by decades of dust, but instead sharp, crystalline, and vast. Next came the foundational furniture. A plush, emerald green velvet sofa was rolled into place.